Okay, we continue. What is the coefficient of x squared in 1 plus x to the power of 6? So it would be 6 choose 2 times x squared. So 15 times x squared. The answer is 15. 15 is the coefficient of x squared in the expansion of 1 plus x all to the power of 6. What is the coefficient of x in 1 plus 2x all cubed? So we can see that the coefficients are going to be 1, 3, 3, 1. And x will be the second term. Or rather 2x will be the second term. So the answer is 6. 6 is the coefficient of x in the expansion of 1 plus 2x all cubed. What is the coefficient of x cubed in the expansion of 1 plus x all to the power of 5? We visualize the row of Pascal's triangle that goes 1, 5, 10, 10, 5, 1. And x cubed will have a coefficient of 10. So 10 is the coefficient of 1 plus x all to the 10 is the coefficient of x cubed in 1 plus x all to the 5. Using the first two terms of 1 plus x all to the 8, what is an approximation of 1.01 to the power of 8? That row of Pascal's triangle begins 1, 8 when we expand 1 plus x all to the 8. And considering that x in this case is represented by 0.01, the approximation of 1.01 all to the 8 should start off as 1.08. And that's using 1 plus x all to the 8 to find an approximation of 1.01 to the 8. In a triangle with sides 5 and 5 and included angle 60, what is the size of the third side? So this is an equilateral triangle, because if 60 is the angle of 60 degrees is between the two sides of length 5, then the two base angles have to be equal, and therefore they are both 60, and therefore it's an equilateral triangle. Whereas if 60 is one of the other angles, then that would be the case as well. In a triangle with angles 30 degrees and 90 degrees, the side opposite 30 degrees is 4. What is the length of the side opposite 90 degrees? Alright, so we visualize a right triangle, the focus angle being 30, the opposite side being of length 4. And the adjacent side we can work that out by knowing that the cosine of 30 degrees is equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Okay, that doesn't help us. Well, the hypotenuse, we can use the SOC part of trigonometry. Okay, so the sine of 30 degrees is the length of the opposite side over the hypotenuse. And the sine of 30 degrees is a half. So a half is 4 over the length of the hypotenuse, which is the side opposite the 90-degree angle. And therefore the hypotenuse is of length 8. And that answers the question of, given a triangle with angles 30 degrees and 90 degrees, and the side opposite 30 degrees is of length 4, what is the length of the side opposite the 90-degree angle? In a triangle with, the question is, what is the area of a triangle with sides of length 6 and 10 and an included angle of 30 degrees? We are to assume that the 30-degree angle is between the sides of length 6 and 10. And we are to use the area formula, which states that the area of a triangle is A times B times the sine of the angle between them. Applying this formula, the area of this triangle should be half of 6 times 10 times the sine of 30. And the sine of 30 degrees is a half. Therefore, the area of this triangle is a half times 6 times 10 times a half, which is a quarter of 60, which is 15 square units. So, 15 square units is the area of a triangle which has sides of length 6 and 10 and an included angle of 30 degrees, which we are interpreting as the angle between those two sides. What is the hypotenuse of a right triangle with legs of length 9 and 12? Recall that the legs of a right triangle are the two shorter sides of the right triangle. The longest side is called the hypotenuse. So in this case, we will apply the Pythagorean theorem, which states that the square of the hypotenuse is the square root of the sum of the squares of the lengths of the two legs. So 9 squared are 12 squared, which is 81, plus 144, which is 225, and then square root that, and we get 15. "15 is the hypotenuse of the right triangle with legs of length 9 and 12. What is the period of y equals sine of x in degrees? The answer is 360 degrees. That is the period of y equals sine of x in degrees. What is the maximum value of y equals cosine of x? The answer is 1. 1 is the maximum value of y equals cosine of x. What is the period of y equals tan of x in degrees? The answer is 180 degrees. That is the period of y equals tan of x in degrees. What is the maximum value of y equals 4 times sine of x? The maximum value is 4. That is the maximum value of y equals 4 times sine of x. What is cosine of 120 degrees? The answer is -1/2. What is sine of 30 degrees? The answer is 1/2. 1/2 is sine of 30 degrees. Simplify sine squared x plus cosine squared x. The answer is 1. As this is the famous Pythagorean identity, sine squared x plus cosine squared x is identical to 1. Simplify 1 minus cosine squared x. The answer is sine squared x, rearranging that Pythagorean identity. What is the smallest non-negative solution of sine of x equals a half in degrees? The smallest non-negative solution of sine of x equals a half in degrees is 30 degrees. What is the solution of cosine of x equals 0 for x between 0 and 180 degrees inclusive? The answer is 90 degrees. What is the smallest positive solution of tan of x equals -1 in degrees? The answer is 135 degrees. That is the smallest positive solution of tan of x equals -1 in degrees. If sine of x equals cosine of x and x is acute, what is the value of x in degrees? The answer is 45 degrees. That is the solution to sine of x equals cosine of x if x is acute. What is the vector from point A 2,1 to point B 5,7? The direction vector A to B is 3,6, or 3i plus 6j if you prefer. Three I plus 6j is the direction vector from point A 2,1 to point B 5,7. What is the magnitude of the vector 5,12? Applying the Pythagorean theorem to the components, the magnitude of that vector would be the square root of 5 squared at 12 squared, which is the square root of 169, which is 13. Thirteen is the magnitude of the vector 5,7. Oh, beg your pardon. 13 is the magnitude of the vector 5,12. What is the direction of the vector 1,0 in degrees? 0 degrees is the direction of the vector 1, 0. If the direction vector O to A is 2i plus j, and the direction vector O to B is 5i plus 4j, what is the direction vector A to B? In other words, how do I get from point A to point B? It would be 3i plus 3j. 3i plus 3j is the direction vector A to B when OA is 2i plus j and OB is 5i plus 4j. Oh. Okay, so a miscount has happened at some point. That's fine. If the direction vector A to B is vector small a, and the direction vector B to C is vector small b, beg your pardon, I'm not sure if I said that right, let me begin again. If the direction vector A to B is vector small a, and the direction vector B to C is vector small b, what is the direction vector A to C? It would be vector A plus vector B. A velocity has components 6 kilometers east and 8. Beg your pardon. A velocity has components 6 kilometers per hour east and 8 kilometers per hour north. What is the resultant speed? Applying the Pythagorean theorem to the magnitudes of the components, we get 6 squared at 8 squared and then square root that, resulting in 10 kilometers per hour. What is dy by dx for y equals x to the 5? Applying the power rule, we see that it's 5x to the 4. (5x to the 4 is dy by dx for y equals x to the 5. Using first principles, what is the derivative of y equals 3x? First principles thinking tells us that the entire aim of the derivative is to find the rate of change of a function. And y equals 3x has a constant rate of change, namely 3. It's possible to use the limit definition of the derivative, but that's not necessary in the case of a line. If y equals 4x cubed, what is dy by dx? The answer is 12x squared. (12x squared) is dy by dx when y is equal to 4x cubed. What is the smallest positive solution of tan of x equals -1 in degrees? The answer is 135 degrees. That's the smallest positive solution of tan of x equals -1 in degrees. Oh, I'm sorry. I answered the wrong question. Let's do it again. What is the gradient of the tangent to y equals x squared at x equals 5? First, note that dy by dx equals 2x. Then, subbing x for 5, we get that dy by dx equals 10 in that case, meaning the gradient of the tangent is 10. The gradient of the tangent to y equals x squared at x equals 5 is 10. What is the gradient of the normal to y equals x squared at x equals 1? First, dy by dx equals 2x. Then, subbing in x equals 1, we get that the gradient of the tangent at that point is 2. And the gradient of the normal would be the negative reciprocal, which is -1/2. For y equals x squared minus 8x, at what value of x is the function minimum? Factorizing it, we have y equals x times x minus 8. And therefore the two solutions are 0 and 8. And the line of symmetry is 4. So we must substitute 4. 4 squared take 8 times 4 is -16. And that's the minimum of y equals x squared minus 8x. What is the second derivative of y equals x to the 4? The first derivative, dy by dx, equals 4x cubed. The second derivative, d2y by dx squared, equals 12x squared. And that is the second derivative of y equals x to the 4. What is the nature of the stationary point y equals x squared plus 6x? The answer is it is a minimum. That is the nature of the stationary point of y equals x squared plus 6x, a minimum. If displacement s equals t cubed, what is the velocity when t equals 2? Velocity is ds by dt, and ds by dt is 3t squared. Letting t equal 2, we get 12. That is the velocity of x. That is the velocity when the displacement s equals t cubed. That is the velocity when the displacement is specified by s equals t cubed and the time t is equal to 2. The answer is 12. What is the integral of x cubed with respect to x? The integral of x cubed with respect to x is 1/4 of x to the 4 plus the constant of integration. What is the integral of 6x with respect to x? The answer is 3x squared plus c. That is the integral of 6x with respect to x. If dy by dx equals 4x and y equals 0 when x is equal to 0, what is y? We must integrate 4x, and in doing so we get 2x squared plus c. So y is equal to 2x squared plus c, and 0 should be where x and y are to get the value of c, and c is simply 0. Evaluate the integral from 0 to 2 of x dx. The integral is 1/2 of x squared. One half of x squared, and now we must sub in 2 and then sub in 0 and do the former minus the latter. And in doing so, we get that the answer is simply 2. The integral from 0 to 2 of x dx is just 2. Evaluate the integral from 1 to 3 of 2 dx. This is a constant we are integrating now. So the integral is 2x, and it goes from 1 to 3. So to evaluate it, we do 2 times 3 minus 2 times 1. And the answer is 4. Four is the result of integrating from 1 to 3 2 dx. What is the area under y equals x from x equals 0 to x equals 4? Applying the area formula of right triangles, we get that the answer is 8. That's the area under y equals x from x equals 0 to x equals 4. The answer is 8. What is the area between y equals -3 and the x-axis from x equals 0 to x equals 2? The answer is 6. We merely have to visualize a rectangle. What is the area between y equals x squared and the x-axis from x equals 0 to x equals 2? Integrating x squared with respect to x, we get 1/3 of x cubed, and then we just need to sub in 2 and sub in 0 and subtract the latter from the former. So 1/3 of 2 cubed is 8/3, and subbing in 0 we obviously get 0, so the answer is 8/3 or 2 2/3. What is 2 to the 6? The answer is 64. That is 2 to the 6. What is the derivative of e to the x? The answer is e to the x. That's the derivative of e to the x. What is the gradient of y equals e to the x at x equals 0? As the derivative is e to the x, we need only sub in x equals 0, and then we find that the answer is 1. A quantity grows by 20% year after year. If the initial value was 100, what is its value after 1 year? The answer is 120. What is log base 2 of 32? As in, to what power must I raise 2 in order to get 32? The answer is 5. What is log base 10 of 10,000? The answer is 4. 4 is log base 10 of 10,000. Simplify log base 3 of 9 plus log base 3 of 27. Using the laws of logarithms, this should be log base 3 of 9 times 27, which is log base 3 of 243, which is 5. Five is the answer to log base 3 of 9 plus log base 3 of 27.